Hey guy, shut it. Your little ukulele video is not gonna go viral, huh? Hey, try and pay attention to something a little longer than a fucking Snapchat. You're coming with me. I want to tell you a story about a young lad named Jacob Best. Just a local drunk, but there was something special about the dude. A haze in his eye, stumble in his step, a gas in his belly. And one day he went on a walk. For Mr. Best, the walk started because he was bored. The year was 1843 and he was only 34 years old. YouTube videos to pass the time? Well, these were the days when men were sent into the fields, into war, to Nebraska, or worse. Tough times. Young Jacob, he was drunk enough to be lucky. And his father's bar, where he was born and neglected, was sold, and the proceeds were used to open his own brewery. Mr. Best established the Empire Brewery on a piece of land that we know as God's playground. You guessed it, Milwaukee. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, holy shit, is this beer older than Jesus? How come I don't know about this, the best beer in the history of America? Well, chances are, my ignorant friend, you have. Only you know it as a different name, such as you know Christian Bale as Batman. Really? Back in the day, bars were stocked with a fair selection of microbrews, but I'd say they'd be a bit disgusting. Anyway, for Mr. Best, disgusting wasn't good enough. He began blending different malts and hops as a way of offering his buddies a consistent, strong-ass product. This beer tasted like the tears of a dying bald eagle, mixed with the fiery sweat of millions of hard-working Americans and an ounce of fucking freedom. They named this beverage Pabst Blue Ribbon. When Mr. Best's son-in-law, Frederick Pabst, took over the business, he did what any true, hard-working American hero would and named it after himself. He called it Pabst Brewing Company. Pabst Brewing Company became the biggest name in a rapidly growing industry. They were unstoppable, and naturally the best beer in the world couldn't go too long without being awarded. Thanks, pal. Soon the boys in Milwaukee had won enough prizes to tie a blue ribbon around each and every bottle that rolled out of the brewery, just because they could. Kind of like the Kanye West of beers. So for Jacob, he kept walking. Mr. Pabst wasn't content with being the biggest brewer in all of Milwaukee. He had bigger plans in mind. So by 1898, he had developed the round bottle, now with a label of precisely 0 degrees. No big deal, you might think, but you'd be wrong. The straight label now meant you could read it without cocking your head, and the round bottle made it easier to hold, thus less breakages. Quite the character, this Mr. Pabst, master of the drunkard's craft. Ambitious. Uncompromising. Unlike clueless hipsters nowadays who spend their time making ringtones for their pagers and dreaming of internships at Napster with little to no idea of what their forefathers went through to put PBR in their bellies in the first place. By 1904, Pabst had dropped dead, and his two sons, Gustav and Frederick Jr., took over the business leading into the 20th century. World War I had caused a global silk shortage and forced PBR to stop operations, which meant they had to stop hand-tying ribbons around each and every bottle. That's why I'm always sure to carry my own ribbon. Huh? Holy shit, it's already the 20s. And the Pabst are forced to shut down shop due to the worst idea in American history, a socialist nightmare also known as the Prohibition. But in the spirit of a true American entrepreneur, the Pabst wouldn't let the law stop them from making money and pursued their happiness as cheese producers. What was the cheese called, you might ask? Pabst said, of course. And unsurprisingly, the Pabst were fucking awesome at making cheese too. So when Prohibition ended, they sold their cheese operation to Kraft, the makers of the finest drunk cheese known to man. And that's PBR. so they kept walking. As the 100th millionth barrel of PBR was sold in 1958, it had become like a member of every American family. Kind of like the drunk old uncles sitting in the corner. Immortalized by screen legends, celebrated by David Lynch.
Heineken? Fuck that shit! Pabst Blue Ribbon!
Singers, songwriters, novelists, David Lynch.
Pabst Blue Ribbon!
Bus drivers, school teachers, and unemployed people everywhere. There was no going back for PBR and no going back from PBR. By the 20th century, the familiar 12-ounce can was then replaced with the 24-ounce can. That was then replaced with the 32-ounce bottle. And that was replaced, of course, by the grandest of them all, the PBR 40-ouncer. By the 21st century, PBR was not only just the world's best brand, but it was a national symbol of success. The brand's Get Drunk mantra was adopted by college kids and hipster douchebags everywhere. And what would Jacob thought of all this? He'd have loved it. Milwaukee farm-born, bred drunk he might have been, but he and the tipsy masses that followed him were possessed with a fiery ambition and the endurance and addiction to match. And today, like 500 years later, I bet old Best is still drinking, and he's not showing any signs of stopping.